In this video, I want to talk about how emotional hijacks are survival mechanisms, not personal failures, how your prefrontal cortex is your executive ally, basically the brain's CEO that can help you to pause, reflect, and choose how you respond instead of just reacting, how stress and overwhelm literally impact brain function, which explains why thinking positively or just getting over it doesn't work when you're flooded emotionally. We're also going to talk about how nervous system regulation involves various practices like breathwork, grounding, movement, how they don't just help you feel good, but they help your prefrontal cortex reconnect and take back the reins. We'll talk about how you can stop beating yourself up for emotional reactions and start seeing them as biological signals that need your attention, not your judgment. Timestamps are below. My name is Ariana. I am a high performance coach. Thank you for being here. At the core of emotional regulation is a fascinating and often misunderstood interaction between two key areas of the brain, the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. When you grasp how these brain areas interact, you move from feeling like emotions are unpredictable or uncontrollable to knowing how and why your brain reacts the way it does. Let's start with understanding that emotions don't start in your mind. They begin in your body as sensory experiences, changes, and primal responses to your internal and external world. When something in your environment feels threatening, unfamiliar, exciting, or intense, whether it's a sharp email, an unexpected compliment, or even a thought spiraling into worst-case scenarios, your amygdala is the first part of the brain to light up. The amygdala's role is like a sensitive alarm system, constantly scanning for danger, whether that danger is real, remembered, or imagined. It's lightning fast, operating below the level of conscious awareness, and it doesn't pause to fact-check. Suppose the amygdala detects anything it associates with fear, rejection, or previous emotional injury, and in that case, it sounds the alarm and floods your system with signals to either fight, flee, freeze, or fawn, all in the name of survival. This emotional activation isn't just in your head, it immediately sends messages through your hypothalamus, a key player in keeping your body's internal environment stable and balanced, prompting the release of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, increasing your heart rate, sharpening your focus, and preparing your body for action. The hippocampus, which sits nearby, then pulls up relevant memories like,
"This feels like that time you were left out." "Remember when this kind of conversation went..."
and then it layers context and emotion into your current experience. Meanwhile, the insula, another lesser known yet important area of the brain, processes your internal bodily sensations, tight chest, clenched jaw, butterflies in the stomach, adding a visceral texture to your emotions. All of this can happen in a number of seconds, often before you've even consciously named what you're feeling. It's less a linear pipeline and more an interactive loop. The amygdala triggers the hypothalamus to start the stress reaction, while the hippocampus helps regulate the amygdala's response based on memory and context, keeping your emotional responses in check when possible. The amygdala signals the hypothalamus to activate the body's stress response. Now, the hippocampus, which provides memory context to the amygdala, influences how strongly the alarm is sounded or dampened. These structures operate in a circuit rather than a simple straight line. At the core of emotional processing is the amygdala, that small almond-shaped cluster of nuclei buried deep within the limbic system. While it's often referred to as the brain's fear center, its role is far more expansive and nuanced, especially when it comes to how we relate to ourselves and others. Yes, the amygdala is responsible for detecting threats and initiating survival responses, but it also plays a key role in emotional memory, social cognition, and empathy. And when something in your environment triggers a strong emotional response, whether it's a perceived threat, a subtle tone shift in someone's voice, or even the way someone looks at you, the amygdala lights up. It doesn't just detect external cues, it associates present moment experiences with emotional memories from the past, deciding within milliseconds whether a situation is safe, familiar, or it needs defending against. And this is why certain people, places, or situations can evoke strong emotional reactions without you consciously knowing why. The amygdala remembers, especially anything that once carried an emotional charge like fear, shame, or even rejection. What's often overlooked, though, is that the amygdala is also deeply involved in recognizing and interpreting facial expressions, especially those related to fear, anger, and sadness. This function is essential for social interaction. It helps you read the room, pick up on subtle emotional cues, and attune to others. others. So for example, if someone furrows their brow or avoids eye contact, your amygdala registers this micro expression and begins scanning for meaning. Are they upset with me? Am I safe here? Do I need to adjust how I'm showing up? This process happens instantly and often below conscious awareness, yet it shapes your relational dynamics from moment to moment. Even more fascinating is that the amygdala has a hand in empathy. It helps you not only perceive emotional expressions in others, but also mirror and respond to them, forming the basics of emotional attunement. And when someone shares something vulnerable, amygdala contributes to that subtle somatic knowing, the gut sense of, I feel that with you. So in leadership, parenting, coaching, or intimate relationships, the amygdala is helping you navigate emotional resonance and relational safety, the unspoken language beneath your words. But here's where things get tricky. The amygdala's sensitivity, while powerful, can also become hyperactive, especially in high-stress environments or for those who have experienced chronic stress, invalidation, or trauma. When the amygdala is constantly on high alert, it can misread neutral or ambiguous social cues as threatening. A client's silence might feel like disapproval, a partner's distraction might register as rejection, even feedback can feel like an attack. This is not a mindset flaw, it's a neurological pattern. And unless the nervous system is supported and the prefrontal cortex re-engaged, it's easy to spiral into defensiveness, withdrawal, or emotional overreaction because your brain is doing what it was wired to do. Protect you. So when the amygdala becomes overreactive or oversensitive, your emotional responses start to skew towards hypervigilance. In this state, the brain begins to perceive threats, even in the absence of real danger, not because you're irrational, but because your nervous system is trying to keep you safe based on past experience. This is where the hippocampus steps in, the part of your brain responsible for memory formation and emotional context. The hippocampus works closely with the amygdala to tag your experiences with emotional significance. If something painful or threatening happened to you in the past, even something that seemed minor on the surface but left an emotional imprint, your hippocampus stores that memory and flags it for the future. The next time something even remotely similar occurs, it quietly nudges the amygdala with a message that says something like,
Hey, this looks like that one time we got hurt. We better be on high alert.
And the kicker is that the amygdala doesn't process time. It doesn't know whether something happened last week, 5 years ago, or in childhood. It only knows the feeling state. So when the hippocampus feeds it emotionally charged memories, the amygdala responds as if that past pain is happening right now. And this can lead to a loop where your nervous system is constantly preparing for impact, bracing, overthinking, or shutting down, even when your logical mind knows there's nothing to fear. This is especially common in high-functioning individuals who've learned to push through emotions, to perform, please, or achieve. Your mind might be sharp and strategic, but if your amygdala and your hippocampus are locked in a feedback loop of unresolved emotional memory, no amount of mindset work will fully bring ease. And that's why true emotional regulation isn't just cognitive, it's somatic and neurological. It requires creating safety in the body so the brain can update its narrative. And once this emotional response has been initiated by the amygdala and supported by the limbic system, the group interconnected brain structures that play a central role in our emotions, memory, motivation, and behavior, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain sitting behind your forehead, that has a chance to step in. This region is responsible for higher order thinking. It's where your logic, reasoning, decision-making, and emotional regulation live. When the prefrontal cortex is engaged, you can pause, reflect, and choose your response rather than being swept away in a reactive pattern. This is the difference between snapping at your partner or pausing to take a breath, between internalizing criticism or seeing it as feedback. But when the amygdala is highly activated, like in moments of intense stress and burnout, the prefrontal cortex essentially goes offline. The connection between your emotional brain and your logical brain gets disrupted, which is why even the most self-aware person can find themselves saying, doing, or thinking things that feel out of character. Understanding this helps shift us out of shame and into self-compassion. It reminds us that regulation isn't just about staying calm, it's about creating enough internal safety for the amygdala to quiet down and for the rest of your brain, especially the prefrontal cortex, to come back online. This is the foundation of emotional leadership, not bypassing emotion, but befriending your biology so that you can move from a reaction to response, from fear to clarity, and from self-protection to relational presence. Let's see how this plays out in in the wild. Let's say you're on a Zoom call with a new client or colleague. Things are going well. You're leading the conversation. You're in your zone. And then suddenly they go quiet. Their face becomes neutral. There's no nod, no smile. They just stare. And in that moment, you feel your chest tighten. Your thoughts start to race. Did I say something wrong? They don't like what I just said. They're not impressed. I've lost them. But even if nothing dramatic has happened, your body starts to shift. Your heart rate spikes. Your voice wavers slightly, and you become hyper aware of how you're being perceived. You might over-explain, people please, withdraw. And on the surface, it looks like you're just having a moment of doubt. But under the hood, your amygdala just hijacked your nervous system and your hippocampus fed it the script. Here's what's likely going on behind the scenes. At some point in the past, maybe in school, a toxic work environment, or an early relationship, your experience was a moment where someone's disapproval, silence, or blank facial expression carried emotional weight. That might have been followed by rejection, shame, or criticism, and your hippocampus stored that emotional memory, even if you don't consciously recall it now. So when a similar cue shows up, like the flat stare from a client on Zoom, the hippocampus whispers to the amygdala. The amygdala, being the protective guardian that it is, jumps into action, firing off stress responses before your rational brain has a chance to intervene. And the tricky part is that you might know logically that this client just had a long day, or maybe their camera is frozen, but logic takes a back seat when your body thinks it's in danger, and it's in the absence of tools that downregulate your system that you stay in that loop, overthinking, overworking, over-apologizing, trying to outrun a feeling that was never about this moment in the first place. This is the lived experience of an emotional imprint hijacking the present. And it's incredibly common for high-functioning, self-aware individuals. You can be brilliant, reflective, and successful and still get knocked sideways by a moment that looks objectively small but lands viscerally big. And this is why awareness isn't enough. Emotional regulation, true nervous system work, is the bridge between knowing and embodying safety. Once you learn how to pause, notice, and soothe the physiological response, you can give your brain the update it's been waiting for.
I am here and I am safe.
And that is where your power lives, not in controlling your environment or reading every room perfectly, but in knowing how to return to yourself when old emotions try to take the lead. Context is what allows us to move from reactivity to regulation. When the amygdala fires, fast, instinctive, and emotionally charged, it doesn't wait for facts. It simply detects safe or unsafe, connection, rejection. But the moment we slow down and offer ourselves contextual information, we engage the part of our brain that can reassess. Remember, the prefrontal cortex, once reactivated, is where logic and perspective live. It can evaluate, is this really a threat, or does it just feel similar to a past hurt? And this is where expectation shifts happen. You might pause and remind yourself, this person's silence might mean they're tired, not that they're judging me, or I've done nothing wrong, I'm not here to manage their energy or emotions. That contextual reframing softens the initial spike of emotion. It soothes the amygdala and creates a sense of psychological safety, which is what allows the nervous system to settle. You're no longer reacting to the memory. Your hippocampus has just flagged it. Now you're responding to what's true right now. Context helps you reframe the moment through the lens of the here now presence, not past emotional residue. And it doesn't make the emotion disappear, but it gives it shape. It turns an emotional wave into something you can ride, not just something that takes you under. One of the most life-changing sentences that I've learned to recite during an amygdala hijack is this: what am I making this mean about me? This question helps to reshape your emotional response into something aligned with your deeper self, rather than just mere survival instincts. It's the difference between spiraling into self-doubt and anchoring in self-trust, or storming out of a meeting versus staying in the room with your power intact. This process isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about integrating it. The prefrontal cortex doesn't override the amygdala, it partners with it. And when your nervous system feels safe, the cortex can take that raw emotion and its signal and ask, what is this really about? Which part of me is being activated, and how do I want to move forward in a way that's true to me? It allows you to pause, zoom out, and see the bigger picture, gathering not just instinctual cues, but social and emotional data that inform relational and strategic choices. But here's the catch. The cortex can only do its job when it has enough oxygen, time, and calm to come back online. And when you're in a heightened stress state, flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, the connection between the cortex and amygdala gets disrupted. This explains why even the most emotionally intelligent person can sometimes react in ways they later regret. This is why regulation practices are essential. Breathwork, movement, grounding, co-regulation. They don't just make you feel better in the moment, they biologically support the reactivation of the cortex, helping you return to your most empowered self. But when things go wrong during moments of overwhelm, emotional flooding, or intense stress, the prefrontal cortex doesn't just struggle to function, it can go temporarily offline, and that's not a metaphor. The connection between your emotional brain, the limbic system, and your logical brain, the prefrontal cortex, weakens. In this state, your capacity to think, evaluate risk, or find perspective becomes compromised. You're no longer reasoning, you're reacting. And as an example, there are brain scans that consistently confirm that people with PTSD show hyperactivity in the amygdala. Their alarm system is stuck on high alert, ready to detect threats, even when there isn't one. And as a result, triggers that seem minor or neutral to others cause intense reactions and intrusive memories that flood the brain. These intrusive memories don't feel like distant reflections. They are experienced as if the traumatic event is happening again right now. In this state, the prefrontal cortex's ability to contextualize and regulate is severely impaired, so the obvious facts about the current safe environment get lost. This disconnection between emotional reactivity and rational thinking creates a loop where the person feels trapped in their past pain, unable to access perspective or safety no matter how much they intellectually know that they are safe. Even if you don't have PTSD, chronic stress can create a similar kind of overwhelm and emotional dysregulation. When your body is constantly flooded with stress hormones like cortisol, it doesn't just make you feel tense or anxious, it changes your brain's structure. The hippocampus, which, as we spoke about earlier, plays a crucial role in forming and organizing memories and contextualizing emotional experiences, is especially vulnerable. Prolonged exposure to high cortisol levels can cause the hippocampus to shrink. And this shrinkage impairs its ability to properly regulate the amygdala's alarm system, making emotional responses more intense and less grounded in present reality. Research shows that people with depression often have smaller hippocampi, contributing to difficulties in managing emotions, processing memories, and recovering from stress. Practically, this means your brain is less able to put emotional experiences into context. So you're more likely to feel overwhelmed, flooded, or stuck in a loop of negative thought patterns, even if your logical mind knows the situation isn't that dire. This neurobiological reality explains why simply thinking positive or trying harder rarely works when you're chronically stressed or emotionally exhausted. True relief comes from practices that nurture your nervous system and promote neuroplasticity, allowing your brain to rebuild regulatory pathways and create more resilience over time. The hippocampus is remarkably adaptable. It's one of the few areas in the adult brain where neurogenesis, or the growth of new neurons, can occur. This means that even if chronic stress has caused shrinkage or impaired function, the hippocampus can regenerate and strengthen with the right conditions. Activities that promote neurogenesis include regular physical exercise like aerobic activities, things like walking, cycling, dancing, running, adequate, good quality sleep, mindfulness and meditation practices, and learning new skills. Certain nutritional factors as well, like omega-3 fatty acids and antioxidants. By nurturing these habits, you're not just improving brain health, you're actively rebuilding emotional resilience and your ability to regulate stress. This neuroplasticity highlights the potential for transformation and healing, proving that your brain and nervous system are capable of recalibration and growth at any stage of life. And just to highlight something that I just said, learning new skills, whether it's picking up a language, playing a musical instrument, trying a new craft, or tackling a new professional challenge. All of these things stimulate the brain in unique ways that actually promote neurogenesis and strengthen neural connections. This cognitive engagement encourages the hippocampus to grow and adapt, strengthening memory, focus, and emotional regulation. Beyond just mental fitness, learning new skills activates reward pathways that boost motivation and mood, creating a positive feedback loop that supports both brain health and emotional resilience. So investing time in expanding your abilities isn't just about accomplishment. It's an integral part of nurturing a flexible, thriving nervous system. So that was a lot of information. If you've got any questions, please pop them in the comment section below. Of course, all of my details are included in the description as well. So if you've got any personal questions that you don't want to pop on a public forum, I will do my very best to get back to you within 48 business hours. Until the next video, bye for now.